Hi, good morning, and thank you for the kind introduction. So what I am going to do now is a freewheeling meditation, as you see here, on campaigns, and specifically on campaigns that make change. I should let all of you know that this is a meditation in PowerPoint, so it is not a pure play meditation, and it's not particularly meditative. All right, so a few years ago, I asked myself a couple questions about campaigns. I was kind of worried that in this, sorry for the cliche, always-on world that we're all a part of, right? We are making content, distributing content, navigating platforms, or creating platforms, and what that's doing is suffusing and immersing people in content and stuff all the time. So I was worried that in this world that campaigns were irrelevant, or maybe even dead. And it reminded me a little bit of Mark Twain, who you see bobbing here. For those of you who don't know, he's an American writer and a humorist, and there was a journalist who ran his obit, and Mark Twain, who happened to be alive at the time, wrote, "The reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated," in 1897. He then went on to die in 1910. So the question, are campaigns dead? It wasn't only me who had this question. Here you see a panel in the year 2013 at Adweek, another gathering of, and this one, marketing advertising types. So the question they were asking, from campaigns to content platforms, brand storytelling for that always-on world I mentioned before. So they were wrestling with it, these guys, and clearly it takes 5 actual guys to wrestle with that kind of big question. We assume they came up with the answers. So here is the question that I'm going to pose to you today. 1, I believe campaigns are alive and well. The bigger question is, are they the best, are they the most effective operating system to drive change? And I think I have the answer. I'm going to quote this guy. His name is George Lakey. He's kind of a serial activist. He's a Quaker. He's been fighting against violence and fighting against war since the 60s. And he said this: a campaign makes a demand that focuses on a specific target that can yield that demand. So what does a campaign do? Focus, target, focus on the outcome, and ultimately deliver. So right, I'm going to take you through a few flashbacks of campaigns you may not be thinking about right now. The first, the Colonies, the Boston Tea Party. Probably none of you remember it. There was a guy, there he is now. His name is Samuel Adams. And Samuel Adams, known to be a bit of an activist, recognized big issue in the colonies was taxation without representation. Everybody was super pissed off. Samuel Adams created what may have been, don't quote me, the first social network. He pulled together this network of patriots, and every time something was going on, he rallied them to make a difference. Boston Tea Party, you probably heard of it. The ships were coming in filled with British tea. It was going to mess up the colony's economy. He used his social network, got these guys to the ship, and dumped the tea. That was 1773. You probably heard there was a revolution in 1776, and we all know the outcome of that. Okay, so now let's go a little bit further, closer to where we are now, 100 years from that. To the United Kingdom and something called the Contagious Disease Acts. Remember, we're talking about campaigns that make a difference. The Contagious Disease Acts was legislation designed to stop, if we could click, it was designed to end the spread of venereal disease in the United Kingdom. And here's how it worked. It focused on prostitutes. So the legislation allowed for cops to examine prostitutes whenever they wanted to, and if that prostitute was found to have venereal disease, she was put in a sequestered place. If she didn't submit to the examination, she was jailed. So enter a woman, Josephine Butler, and she said, you know what, this is violating the rights of these women, and she began a campaign. And what she did is what a lot of people use now, the authentic voice of the prostitute. She went to the House of Commons, she talked about this issue, she quoted, and here this is a quote from a prostitute who says something like, by men we are examined, handled, doctored. She goes on to say, held up before magistrates who are men, and we never get out of the hands of men till we die. Not super optimistic, but the authentic voice of the prostitute ultimately led her to win this campaign after 20 years, and that legislation was repealed. So, okay, authentic voices, you've got social networks. Now we're going to go a little bit closer to where we are now from around the world, starting with Princess Isabel of Brazil. She did a lot. She campaigned against a lot of things and won. She campaigned against slavery and ultimately campaigned for women to vote in Brazil. Ultimately, women got the vote in Brazil in 1927 after she died. Someone similar in the United States, Susan B. Anthony, campaigned, did nothing with her life but drive the women's suffrage movement in the United States, and won the right to vote. Those campaigns were focused on opinion elites, legislators, moving them to change the status quo. This is just kind of interesting. If you look and you see when countries around the world gave women the right to vote, you see Italy was a little bit early on giving women limited rights to vote. Interesting, Portugal, not till 1976. 2011 was Saudi Arabia, and then this is a big crowd to ask you to guess, but there is only one country in the world that does not allow women to vote. We won't guess here, but it's the Vatican. So make of that what you will. All right. Now we're going to the 1960s. We've covered a lot of territory. And to what we think of as the first women's movement. Some called it women's liberation. This is a woman named Betty Friedan. You can see she had a whole thing around the feminine mystique. What she said is that feminine mystique is burying women. But what she was referring to was white housewives in the United States of America. Millions of women didn't fit in to what she was talking about. So if you look at what happened, and in the sort of timeline of the women's movement, some believe it started with the pill early in the 60s. You could see it progressed. Women at that point were earning 63% of a man's dollar. Interestingly, that hasn't changed terribly much. In the United States, it's about 68% of a man's dollar for white women, and for African-American women, and 70% for white women. I think the global average is 55% of a man's dollar, so not much change there. But you look and see what's going on. So she moved, the campaign moved, created the Equal Rights Amendment. It passed in 1972 and then died in 1982. So the women's movement, as we thought about it, was dead. All right, enter us. By us, I mean the marketing us, the digital us, the social us. We created campaigns like these, like ones for Like a Girl and Dove, and the campaigns that were focused on women's issues around self-esteem and empowerment. And this year, there's some references to Trump and the speakers before, this year on January 21 of 2017, we saw women all around the world gather, really creating what I think of as this second wave of a women's movement. But this one was not exclusive, it was super inclusive, not about specific leaders like Betty Friedan, but you can see here about the invisible bonds of the internet and social media. That's what was creating this movement, so very, very different. And this movement embraced all of the issues that are out there, right? Issues around refugees, issues around reproductive health, issues around race, issues around climate change, all embraced by the movement we saw kick off on January 21. Clearly a lot of passion around that movement. So that brought us to, or me in this case, to another question. Is our collective mission to advance culture or the zeitgeist, right, like Dove has done and like a Girl has done, or is it really to reflect it? And if you looked right after the marches of January 21, Airbnb, Audi, other big marketers came out with campaigns that began to reflect what they were seeing in the streets of cities all around the world. So, question is, what if we were more? What if we, all the collective, hundreds of us in this room, were more like these people, Josephine Butler or Samuel Adams, who's gone on to be a quite famous beer brand in the United States, or Princess Isabel, or in fact more like these people. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're called the Guerrilla Girls. You can probably sense why. They're people, you never know who they are, but they wear gorilla masks. And that what they do, and this is only what they do, is they focus on activism around women in the arts. I began to notice them when I saw this kind of stuff moving across my feed, so you can sort of see the insight. Do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum? Less than 5% of the artists in the modern art sections are women, but 85% of the nudes are women. That was kind of interesting. I hadn't realized that. A pop quiz. If February is Black History Month and March is Women's History Month, what happens the rest of the year? The answer, if you can't read upside down, is discrimination. So what these guys do is they say creative complaining, which sounds like a fantastic job description to me. But, all right. brings us to another thought, and here's the thought, and this is a little bit of word play and a little bit of letter play. What if the word creative became something like, see that addition of letters, that was awesome, something like CREACTIVIST. So what if we all used our creative powers, right? We are all visionary, we are all making something. What if we used those powers to make change? What kind of power would we have to do that? So my belief is that we can all, in fact, be creactivists. And here are 5 easy steps. Here we go. Step 1. So this is really about making stuff real. If you look at all the marketing stuff that you see out there, you may be making some of it or in fact shepherding some of it or moving some of it across your channels. You'll see some of it feels like it's a little bit stereotyped, and it's beyond women, right? If you look, people over 50 tend to always have bladder control problems. If you look at babies, they're always charming and cute when you know sometimes babies are throwing up or hurling stuff at you. Teenagers are always depicted as sullen kids, you know, staring with their phone attached to their face, which may or may not be stereotyped. But bottom line is we have an opportunity to show real life, real people doing real things, making it relatable. And that's how we will shift attitudes, shift things like self-esteem for the next generation. So that's step 1. Making real progress is step 2. A big company called Unilever, I'm sure you are all familiar, looked back in 2016 and said, wow, you know, only 2% of our advertising seems not to depict women in unstereotyped situations. And we are going to pledge to change what we're doing in marketing, to depict all people in unstereotyped situations. And since the time that they've announced that, others, Procter & Gamble has joined, UN Women is behind the effort. So there is a big focus on major marketers to use the power of all the screens that they are moving across to unstereotype what's going on. And I think that's something that we can all get behind. Similarly, for any of us who is now or will be in a hiring situation, hire people clearly different from yourselves, hire women in the technology industries. We all know the stats on that. Creative industries, women are 11% of that. There's an ability for each of us to move the needle and make a difference and do our part to move the numbers. All right, I think we're on to step number 3. You may have heard of the Glass Lion at Cannes, a big advertising festival, for those of you who don't know. The Glass Lion is the first ever award to celebrate campaigns that defy stereotype. So, in whatever you're doing, set up your own award, at least even personally. Push yourself to do the kind of work that really does defy stereotype. And step number 4, make change happen. So I got a couple of minutes left. I just want to show you a few campaigns that have made change happen. Again, remember, the hypothesis is that campaigns still have the power to do that. So I'll start with one that is focused on breast cancer. The power of ad marketing, multi-platform ad marketing, has reduced the mortality associated with breast cancer by about 40%. So campaigns like this one. This is a woman named Chrissy Amphlett. She died of breast cancer. She was part of a rock and roll group in Australia called the Divinals. She wrote this song, I Touch Myself. It was a bit of a rock and roll song. Before she died, she suggested it be used as an anthem to get women focused on self-examination. And I will play you it now.
I love myself. I want you to love me when I feel down. I want you above me. I search myself. I want you to find me. I forget myself. I want you to remind me. I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself. Oh, I don't want anybody else. Oh, no, no, no. You're the one who makes me come running. You're the sun who makes me shine. When you're around, I'm always laughing. I wanna make you mine. I close my eyes and see you before me. Think I would die if you were to ignore me. If folk could see just how much I adore you, I get down on my knees. I do anything for you. else. Oh no, oh no, I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself. I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself. I touch myself. I honestly do. I touch myself. Think I would die if I were to ignore you.
So a campaign that has the power to reduce breast cancer by 40%. It's awesome work. That work is from JWT Australia, by the way. Another campaign, this one from Germany, born of this insight that women cover up violence, physical violence. 1 in 3 women is a victim of physical violence. And the fact that they cover it up reduces the ability to deal with this issue. It is a massive issue around the world. This is a particularly disturbing piece of video. I'm going to cut it off in the middle, but I will show you a little bit. Pretty disturbing. This is an issue that requires a lot more campaigning to make a difference. This is one an out-of-home campaign done in the UAE by TBWA. Just very simple imagery. Look, he gave me this. It's a piece of jewelry and it's a broken arm. I'm going to close on one, and this is another disturbing issue, the issue of female genital mutilation in Kenya. Millions of girls are affected by this issue, girls who are between the ages of 8 and 12. And this is work that my firm, Weber Shandwick, did for an NGO called ActionAid. The goal here was to find a simple social digital mechanism to talk about a really tough issue, and I'll show you how it worked.
Mama niya ba kuwe tata jinya kuwe tata we kome ata kesir mo tata.
I can't show you any of the pictures because obviously I'm not gonna message him back. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not messaging him back at all. Tinder was actually really low.
Mo tata na kekisusat. Alami mutu chanyar mangat.
We're going over to OkCupid because this is where I've gotten the weirdest messages actually. So I've got
lots of interviews, got lots of promo done.
interest of time, I'll cut it off, but you get the idea. Really simple thing, just cutting into people's social media, cutting into their movies to get them to think about this issue. That campaign raised funds and has since built 2 shelters to protect hundreds of little girls in Kenya. So a campaign with real impact. So bottom line, to become a CREACTIVIST, make the change, tell the world about the change you make. And I cannot think of a crowd that is more powerful in driving the kind of change that the world needs. So thank you for listening, and here's to making that change.
Thank you, Gail.